It would be hard. Why? Because why I'm not married to an actress? It's like, Harris, I don't want to see my wife kissing somebody.
Hollywood icon Kevin Costner, a man whose reputation has been forged over decades of restrained power and quiet influence, just made a statement that reverberated far beyond the usual glittering world of red carpets and movie premieres. Spoken with calm precision but loaded with consequence, his words have reportedly landed squarely in the heart of Prince Harry's private world, forcing a reckoning with loyalties, motives, and truths long taken for granted. From the serene charity circles of California to the hushed, polished corridors of the British royal establishment, the impact was immediate, subtle, yet impossible to ignore. This was not casual chatter. This was a moment that threatened to shake reputations, destabilize relationships, and tear at the carefully constructed narratives that both Hollywood and royalty have worked so hard to maintain. Could a single, deliberate statement be the fracture that changes everything? A line drawn firmly in Montecito, one that separates influence from intrusion. Few moments in modern celebrity culture feel as heavy as Costner's calm yet piercing pronouncement. His words carried the weight of decades, a voice that had survived the rise of social media outrage, the constant churn of brand alliances, and the ever-shifting standards of public attention. No theatrics, no staged drama, just precision, and that precision landed like a hammer blow, echoing across continents. The revelation itself was deceptively simple. Meghan Markle would not be attending Costner's private charity event in Santa Barbara. That alone might have been dismissed as minor celebrity maneuvering, but the ripple effect was anything but minor. Costner, a veteran known as much for discretion as for his influence, turned what could have been a passing gossip line into a statement that reshaped conversations on both sides of the Atlantic. He did not raise his voice. He did not draw attention to himself. He simply set a boundary, and that was enough. From a quiet studio overlooking the Pacific, days before the annual event, Costner answered a casual question about the guest list. His response, simple and unyielding, stripped away any illusion or comfort. Meghan would not be attending. What followed was a masterclass in measured explanation, delivered in the tone of a man who understands that words carry weight beyond their sound. He spoke of personal approaches that crossed a line, of boundaries he intended to maintain, and of associations he had no desire to entangle himself with. His words drew a sharp distinction between his world, a world built on decades of earned respect, and hers, which had been shadowed by controversy. Within hours, digital shockwaves carried that distinction from California to London, Washington, and beyond. Royal drama still holds significant weight, and this was not the kind of story that could be dismissed as tabloid speculation or anonymous whispers. This was a direct statement from someone whose career has spanned decades, whose credibility remains unshakable, and whose voice carries authority in Hollywood circles. When Costner speaks, people listen. The setting amplified the symbolism. Santa Barbara and Montecito are more than picturesque enclaves. They are havens for an American elite who prize discretion, legacy, and influence built over time. These are spaces where the powerful retreat to escape the noise, and Prince Harry and Meghan Markle understood the significance when they chose Montecito as their new home. Their departure from the United Kingdom in 2020 was far more than a real estate decision. It was a deliberate repositioning within a social order that blends fame, philanthropy, and influence. But integration into that elite circle required validation from those already established at the table. Costner's annual charity event, originally called 1805 Live, is more than just a gala. It is a key part of that validation system in Santa Barbara. It combines Hollywood elegance with a deeply serious mission, supporting the mental health and well-being of first responders. Firefighters, paramedics, and law enforcement officers are at the center of this mission, and the guest list reflects more than status. It reflects trust, credibility, and genuine concern. For the Sussexes, an invitation would have meant far more than a networking opportunity. It would have been a public acknowledgement of their acceptance into a carefully curated inner circle of American power. That is why Costner's refusal resonated so strongly. This was not personal drama or media theatrics. It was a deliberate denial of access, a sharp check on ambition and influence. The reasoning behind Costner's refusal was just as decisive. He didn't frame it as a misunderstanding or a scheduling conflict. He spoke of personal boundaries that had been crossed and made clear he wanted no entanglement with controversies that continue to linger around certain royal connections. By doing so, he placed responsibility where it belonged, without embellishment, apology, or the need for sensationalism. Hollywood absorbed the message instantly. This was a judgment call from someone whose career has endured shifting trends, public scandals, and industry upheaval. Costner represents a class of influence that does not rely on constant visibility. When he quietly steps back, others take notice. Across the Atlantic, the implications were equally profound. The British monarchy, which has spent decades managing the fallout from past controversies, suddenly confronted the reality that any new association with scandal could upset their carefully maintained balance. Costner's statement reopened conversations many hoped had been closed, tying celebrity culture to lingering royal shadows. Observers called it a reckoning in Santa Barbara, but the effects spread far wider. The situation revealed the subtle yet critical differences between fame and true belonging, between superficial access and authentic acceptance. It highlighted how elite American circles operate on unspoken rules that cannot be overridden by titles, media campaigns, or public pressure. In the end, Costner did not accuse, argue, or campaign. He simply stated his position and moved on. That quiet certainty proved more powerful than outrage ever could. A single, clearly defined boundary reshaped narratives, challenged ambitions, and reminded everyone watching that some doors only open for those who understand the cost of crossing lines. Yet tension was already building in the background. What should have been a celebratory gathering carried an undercurrent of unease in 2023. Hollywood politeness cracked, leaving a strange mood that guests could feel even before speeches began or cameras flashed. Smiles and handshakes were offered, but the atmosphere felt rehearsed rather than genuine. Observers later noted the discomfort was easy to sense, even if no one dared to name it aloud. Business dynamics, not personal rivalries, were the root of the strain. The influence of DME, one of the world's most powerful talent agencies, added pressure to the mix. They sought to present top clients as equals, moving within elite circles. On paper, it seemed simple, but in reality, the pairing was awkward from the start. Sources revealed that Costner resisted pressure to accommodate certain appearances, and the result was a polished yet stiff public image. Video from 2023 shows him beside Prince Harry, composed but distant, with brief, formal exchanges with Meghan. Politeness was observed, but warmth never reached their eyes. It was a performance for the cameras rather than a shared moment. By 2024, the balance had shifted even more dramatically. Only Prince Harry attended. Meghan was absent. Public explanations cited illness, but insiders pointed to frustration over unmet expectations and status clashes. Meghan reportedly sought a co-presenting role, a position she felt matched her profile. Under Costner's direction, the request was declined politely but firmly, and Meghan chose not to attend. Many observers saw this as a pivotal moment, one where intended displays of leverage instead revealed miscalculations. Critics noted the absence clashed with the event's service-focused ethos, raising questions about priorities and motives. The subtle tension of 2023 had grown into a visible divide. By 2025, Costner drew a line in the sand. In a pre-event interview ahead of his charity function, he made a statement that stunned Hollywood insiders and the public alike. It was direct, deliberate, and impossible to misread. In an industry where conflicts are usually handled through leaks, careful wording, and staged press releases, his openness was striking. After more than 4 decades in Hollywood, Costner knew the rules better than most, and he chose to break them. PR experts recognized immediately that such plain-speaking signals the end of private negotiations. Every quiet attempt at resolution had failed, and the boundary was now publicly and irrevocably defined. Even the most seasoned psychologists of celebrity behavior were taken aback by Kevin Costner's quiet but seismic statement. Experts described it as a deliberate boundary set after years of subtle pressure, a moment when restraint carried more force than drama ever could. Costner's words weren't an emotional outburst. They were calculated, deliberate, and final. He was protecting something deeply personal: his home, his charity, and the values that defined both. And the message was clear: even someone connected to royalty was no longer welcome in his carefully curated space. Looking back, the scattered moments reveal a larger, undeniable story. The uneasy smiles at the 2023 charity event, Meghan's conspicuous absence in 2024, and the unflinching statement in 2025, all these pieces fit together like a slow-burning narrative of tension. This wasn't a single disagreement or fleeting miscommunication. It was a build-up of strain, shaped by clashing ideas of influence, expectations, and power dynamics. Every interaction leading up to that moment carried subtle signals, and when the line was finally drawn, it echoed across continents. The most compelling part isn't gossip. It's what this moment reveals about modern celebrity culture. Influence can open doors in a heartbeat, but it can just as easily slam them shut. The polished image of unity, carefully curated by publicists and social media, could no longer hide the cracks beneath. Eventually, those cracks became impossible to ignore, and when they did, one of Hollywood's most respected figures chose clarity over courtesy. Kevin Costner reminded the world watching that not all alliances are meant to last, and sometimes the strongest statement is simply deciding who no longer belongs at your table. So what really happened when someone quietly decides who no longer belongs at their table? Costner's words, "She made an approach toward me," sound calm, almost gentle, but the weight behind them is unmistakable. They suggest distance, discomfort, and a moment when an invisible line had been crossed. His choice of phrasing avoided theatrics, yet painted a picture of firm rejection. Not loud, not cruel, but enough to resonate. That single statement soon grew into something far bigger because it tapped into whispers that had circulated quietly in Hollywood for years. The origin of the story traces back to a 2023 charity event held in a lavish setting where soft music mingled with polite laughter and the clinking of glasses late into the evening. Costner, a veteran known as much for protecting his private life as for his decades-long career, navigated the night with the practiced ease of someone who values control over chaos. Initially, conversations flowed smoothly. Film ideas, charitable projects, casual introductions, everything appeared normal. But according to insiders, the tone subtly shifted. Compliments began to feel less like polite acknowledgement and more like a strategic approach. Discussions of future work soon blurred into suggestions that felt personal rather than professional. The space between career interest and personal closeness closed rapidly, creating a dynamic that Costner, a married man with a reputation for clear boundaries, found uncomfortable. He did not raise his voice. He did not create a scene. Instead, he exercised the quiet authority of stepping back, ending the exchanges politely but unmistakably. At that moment, a line was drawn, a boundary that would echo for years. What made the incident so resonant wasn't just that night, it was the context built over time. Similar stories had followed Meghan Markle since her early acting days on Suits in the early 2000s. They weren't reported in major headlines. Instead, they circulated quietly in private conversations, anonymous online posts, and whispered exchanges at industry dinners. Many painted the picture of a driven actress who understood the value of access, knew how to navigate elite circles, and could use charm as a strategic tool. In Hollywood, being seen, remembered, and invited back often dictates survival. Ambition is praised, but behavior can be read differently depending on gender, context, or perception. Supporters argue that what is lauded as confidence in men is often labeled overreach in women. Yet recurring details from these accounts weren't about ambition. They were about discomfort. Stories described encounters that felt too familiar, too transactional, where warmth appeared tied to expectation rather than genuine connection. When Meghan's status changed, her royal title added a new layer of gravity. Doors that had once opened slowly now seemed to swing wide, yet the expectations and pressures increased. Around this time, the Sussexes signed a landmark deal with WME, a powerful agency tasked with shaping high-profile careers. That agreement brought both opportunity and immense pressure. Meetings and introductions were carefully orchestrated, placing figures like Costner in situations they hadn't sought, challenging their preference for independence. Costner's response was not merely a personal refusal, it was resistance to a system attempting to push a relationship that had not been earned. When he finally spoke, his restraint amplified the force of his words. He didn't accuse, he didn't over-explain. He simply stated what happened from his perspective, letting the weight of truth speak for itself. That simplicity transformed murmurings and whispers into something undeniable. A respected voice had confirmed what many in Hollywood already sensed. The discomfort was real. The statement also revealed the fragile misunderstanding about Hollywood power. Titles, fame, and royal association can attract attention, but they do not replace trust. Legacy in this world is earned through consistency, respect, and interaction, decade by decade, connection by connection. Among its most established figures, reputation matters far more than novelty, and influence cannot be assumed, it must be earned. In the end, this story is less about scandal and more about boundaries, about how ambition is interpreted, and how even in a world infamous for excess, quiet refusal can speak louder than any headline. When access is mistaken for entitlement, it can quickly spiral into awkward or damaging situations. And in this case, one chilling line from Kevin Costner turned a quiet lesson into a moment that echoed from Hollywood all the way to Buckingham Palace. It was a single sentence, but it carried the weight of 1,000 pages. Like a line pulled from a dark novel, Costner cast a shadow stretching from the Californian coastline to the halls of royal power. In that statement, he effectively placed Meghan Markle beside one of the most radioactive figures in modern royalty, linking her by association to a scandal that had already scarred the crown. No proof was offered, no evidence needed. The impact came from proximity alone. The Epstein saga, with its intricate web of power, money, and secrecy, has long been a symbol of corrupted influence, drawing in politicians, financiers, media figures, and royalty. Even after Prince Andrew's public retreat following his disastrous 2019 BBC interview and the 2022 settlement with Virginia Giuffre, the stain clung, refusing to be erased. Damage control had been ongoing for years. Observers noted a curious rhythm. Whenever attention on Prince Andrew peaked, stories involving Prince Harry and Meghan seemed to distract public focus. Many argued the Sussexes became convenient buffers, absorbing heat while deeper crises faded from the public eye. But Costner disrupted that fragile equilibrium by naming both Andrew and Meghan in a single breath, fusing two separate narratives into a single, dark story that could no longer be neatly separated. Rumours linking Meghan to the Epstein world had existed for years, mostly buried in obscure corners of the internet, unsupported and widely dismissed. Some claimed she had encountered elite social circles early in her career. Others suggested Ghislaine Maxwell had mentioned her in private conversations. None of these claims ever surfaced in credible reporting. They were rumours without verification. But when Kevin Costner, a respected veteran with decades of standing in Hollywood, mentioned them indirectly, the whisper became a roar. Costner's words did not create new facts, but they breathed life into old rumours, giving them a visibility they had never previously achieved. In a world where wealth, influence, and celebrity overlap, the mere hint of insider knowledge can ignite suspicion instantly, even for King Charles III himself. Even a single sentence spoken far from palace walls can rattle an institution centuries old. Kevin Costner just proved it. What may have sounded casual on a California interview set triggered waves that echoed from Montecito to Buckingham Palace. Since ascending the throne in 2022, following Queen Elizabeth II's long and turbulent final years, King Charles III has pursued a clear vision, a smaller, calmer, and more stable monarchy fit for the modern world. He wanted restraint, not spectacle, continuity, not chaos. And yet, in one measured comment, Costner tore through that careful design, dragging the institution back into headlines and whispers it had long tried to escape. The palace now faces a trap with no easy exit. Any reaction from Meghan could pull Prince Andrew's past indiscretions back into public scrutiny, unleashing headlines that would leap from London to New York and from Los Angeles to Hong Kong. and silence is just as perilous. Leave the association unaddressed and it hardens, settling into public perception as an unspoken but undeniable link. The connection between the king's brother and his estranged daughter-in-law becomes a quiet poison, eroding trust and legitimacy without a single word of accusation. This is no ordinary scandal. This is a direct strike at the moral authority the crown has relied on for centuries. The monarchy's power has always depended on trust, tradition, and the idea that it stands above the petty, secretive, and often cruel excesses of influence. When names tied to corruption, exploitation, and secrecy are spoken alongside those representing renewal and hope, cracks appear in the facade. Costner's comment did not accuse, prove, or attempt explanation. It simply drew a line. And in doing so, it delivered a blow that careful messaging, decades of PR, and internal management might struggle to undo. Could one voice, spoken far from the corridors of Buckingham Palace, destabilize years of careful planning? In this case, it has, and in ways that continue to unfold. The subtle tremor is perhaps even more destabilizing than an overt attack. Crowns don't always fracture from direct conflict. Sometimes they shake because of quiet, unexpected forces. That is exactly what happened here. The story unfolded, not in London, but across the Atlantic, in a California studio where a seemingly casual television exchange sent waves of unease coursing through royal corridors. The royal household had long believed that distance, thousands of miles across the ocean, would protect the institution from American headlines, social media chatter, and the daily antics of the Sussexes. That belief shattered instantly. Private concerns became public overnight. Worse, they merged with unresolved controversies that had been carefully compartmentalized for years. Observers note that this is not simply another news cycle. It is confirmation of long-held doubts within the palace about Meghan Markle's judgment and the circles she has moved in since her early Hollywood career. At the center of this anxiety lies a question the monarchy rarely confronts. What happens when royal titles themselves become liabilities? The removal of a title is not symbolic theatre. It is a constitutional step steeped in law, history, and precedent. The most famous example comes from 1917, at the height of World War I, when Parliament, with the monarch's approval, stripped royal titles from those who sided with Britain's enemies. While today's circumstances differ, the principle is timeless. When actions are judged deeply damaging to the crown, titles can be revoked. King Charles has quietly applied this principle in recent years. The removal of remaining styles and honours from Prince Andrew created a modern precedent, signalling that patience has limits. It is no longer possible to wait indefinitely when repeated controversies threaten public confidence. Sources inside the palace suggest a similar file is now being assembled behind closed doors, focused squarely on Meghan. Costner's comments carry extraordinary weight precisely because of who he is, a Hollywood icon, independent of royal politics, and respected globally. His claim that Meghan made an uninvited approach, combined with indirect references linking her to the Epstein saga, has strategic significance. This is not tabloid chatter. It is a credible, calm, and highly influential voice entering conversations that palace strategists cannot dismiss. For King Charles, the situation is a complex tangle of duty, family, and legacy. He is a father, burdened with grief over his fractured relationship with Prince Harry. He is also a sovereign, tasked with preserving an institution that must endure beyond personal feelings. Years of public criticism from the Sussex have already tested his patience, and insiders suggest that Costner's remarks pushed that tolerance to its limit. Prince William views the matter through a different lens. The future king sees ongoing controversy as a direct threat to the stability of his eventual reign. From this perspective, a clean and lasting separation from the Sussexes is not cruelty. It is necessary. Stability, after all, is the monarchy's most valuable currency. Constitutional experts caution that moving forward would be fraught with risk. Any formal process to strip titles would likely require a petition to Parliament, triggering public debate, media scrutiny, and political commentary. Meghan would almost certainly respond, both in court and through public relations campaigns, prolonging a battle that could dominate headlines for months. And yet, public opinion is shifting. Petitions calling for the removal of Sussex titles have garnered hundreds of thousands of signatures. What once seemed radical is now openly debated. Many palace insiders believe that Costner's words may have been the tipping point, the moment when private concern hardened into actionable resolve. If such a step is taken, it would mark an irreversible turning point. For Prince Harry, it would mean total separation from family, heritage, and homeland. For the monarchy, it would be a painful acknowledgement of failure, but perhaps a necessary one to safeguard the institution's survival. What began as a seemingly small interview in California has evolved into a reckoning, forcing the House of Windsor to confront truths it long hoped would remain buried. Whispers are growing louder. Long-buried concerns are pressing forward. Public perception is shifting, and questions once avoided are now unavoidable. Costner's statement did more than simply report a fact. It crystallized suspicion into public consciousness, blending Hollywood influence with royal sensitivity. Suddenly, events and interactions previously contained become a single narrative with global visibility. The ripple effect is astonishing. Across the UK, social media, blogs, and petitions discuss the Sussex titles with unprecedented intensity. International news outlets replay the California interview repeatedly, analysing tone, word choice, and implication. Even private palace meetings reportedly reference Costner's statement as evidence of a broader pattern, highlighting the intersection of personal relationships, reputation, and public perception. This story demonstrates the fragile intersection of fame, influence, and royalty. Titles may confer attention, but they do not confer trust. Reputation must be built over decades, interaction by interaction. Even the most polished public figure can be disrupted by a single credible voice. Costner's measured, deliberate comment illustrates this perfectly. It serves as a reminder: boundaries matter, influence is earned, and sometimes the loudest statement is the one delivered calmly, from afar. So what exactly did Kevin Costner reveal? What was it about a simple, quiet sentence that left Prince Harry questioning everything he thought he knew about Meghan? That is the question everyone watching is asking, and we want to hear your take. How do you interpret the ripple effect of a single comment spoken across the ocean, with consequences reaching all the way to Buckingham Palace? Share your thoughts, and if you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of this unfolding story.